Hello and welcome to Podtoid. We are your hosts. I'm CJ.
I'm Chris.
I'm Charlotte.
I'm Occams.
And this is episode 417. We have a good show for you today. Dan, unfortunately, is out. He is once again out there in the wilderness with his family camping, which is something he I don't know. I can't remember the last time I've been camping. He's been camping like 30 times since we started this show. So
it was interesting the way you phrased that, because if you'd said that Dan was missing first and then later you'd said we have a good show, it wouldn't sound like anything. But because you said we had a good show and then you said Dan's not here straight afterwards, it sounds like you were making out that the two were related, which isn't true, of course, but I just thought it sounded that way.
Oh, we're already off to a great start this week. So Dan's not here, but we still have a good show for you today. We're going to talk about some Mario Kart Tour, some Last of Us 2, the Uncharted movie that is apparently still going to be made, and a whole lot more. But first, you guys have a good week. Anyone do anything interesting?
I'm attempting to, back about around like 1991, maybe a little earlier, kids here, they used to say crucial as like a positive thing. So people would be like, did you see the latest episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Hero Turtles.
There you go.
Someone would be like, yeah, it was crucial. So what I've been doing this week is trying to bring that back.
It's an admirable cause.
It's been exhausting, to be honest.
That reminds me of this thing that I went on when I was a school kid called Crucial Crew. And it was a residential, not residential, it was like a day trip to, it was sort of, it's really hard to describe. It was like in a warehouse and it was like all these different stations and it was showing you like somebody who'd like taken a fall and like hit their head and was like bleeding everywhere. And like, it was like demonstrating like first aid and like to call 911 to young kids and traumatizing them in the process.
Was this in the 90s?
This was in the early 2000s.
I was wondering whether, if I could guess whether crucial and crew were both spelt with K's in the. Because there was that little period, wasn't there, in the early 2000s where all C's became K's and all S's became Z's.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what gave us the Kresties Comedy Classic.
And Chris Cross.
All right. Before we get into the show, we want to start you out with a story from the great state of Louisiana, birthplace of jazz, jambalaya, the only good season of True Detective, and apparently truck stop petting zoos. Now, Occams, you've been here before, so I'm going to just ask that you sit this one out. But Charlotte and Chris, what types of animals do you think they have at a truck stop petting zoo?
Guinea pigs.
That's exactly what that was exactly.
Oh,
the
man.
first animal.
Almost spit my coffee out.
Yeah. The first animal came to my head was a guinea pig. I'm not thinking anything bigger than a rabbit.
Boy, if only that
Maybe
were
a goat or two.
Bless y'all. Bless your sweethearts.
Yeah, you guys need to learn more about the South before you. I guess I ask questions like that. Would you believe a tiger?
Oh, fuck's sake!
Yeah. So this place, it's located in, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong because I don't speak Creole, but I think it's Gross Titty. It's spelled Tete, so I'm just going to go with Gross Titty. There is a truck stop called
We called it Gross Taint when we were in high school.
It's called Tiger Truck Stop. It's named as such because the owner of the truck stop once kept a 500-pound Bengal tiger in a cage for nearly 20 years. The tiger's name was Tony, by the way, in case you're wondering the creativity level of this truck stop driver or truck stop owner. Anyways, so a few years ago, the truck stop owner had to euthanize Tony the tiger because it had a kidney infection. And he eventually replaced him with a camel and something called a coati, which is an animal I've never heard of. And then when I Googled it, it just looks like a mashup of a weasel and a monkey. So anyways, the Tiger Truck Stop is now home to this camel and this abomination of God. Now, last week, a woman from Florida was at the Tiger Truck Stop with her husband and dog when the dog got away from the couple and ran into Casper the camel's pen. The woman chased after it, and somehow, this is not at all explained in the Fox News story I read on it, the 600-pound camel ended up sitting on the woman. It makes No mention of why she was in the vicinity of this camel's rear, but I digress. So the camel is allegedly sitting on this woman, crushing her because it weighs 600 pounds. When she finally figures out a way to get it off of her, what she told police was this, and I quote, "I bit his balls to get him off me. I bit his testicles to get him off me."
It was almost as if she said the first line. Then she thought, "Oh, that's a bit crass. I'll say it again, but I'll say testicles instead."
Again, there are so many questions about not only how this camel came to sit on her, but how her face was positioned just perfectly to be able to bite its balls. The story says the woman was taken to the hospital, but does not say that she was injured. The dog was okay, and the woman and her husband were charged with trespassing and not having a dog on their leash. Now, Occams, you have been to this truck stop. Is it as sad as it sounds?
Oh, man. What was the name of that movie? Dickie Roberts' former child star? The one with David Spade, where he has the mullet.
Yeah. Well, that's Joe Dirt.
Joe Dirt. Yeah. It is a real life version of a Joe Dirt scene. The tiger, I remember seeing the tiger. It was very pathetic and very sad. It was in a oversized kennel for all intents and purposes. For an animal that large, whose home theoretically would have been somewhere in the African plains doing tiger stuff. It looked miserable and emaciated and very unhappy. So, okay, it's hard for Charlotte and Chris. It might be difficult to understand this. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a British or European equivalent, but in the South, at least, sometimes people have multiple dogs and they build these kennels, these big, large chain linked like boxes for multiple dogs, usually pit bulls or Doberman Pinschers or something. And this was kind of the habitat this tiger had. And it was a lot of concrete. It was upsetting. I even knew when I went back then that this isn't right. Like, you shouldn't have a tiger within like 30 yards of like tanker trucks that are just always on. And it was a bad scene. And then the inside of the place, from what I remember, no small amount of like rebel flags and commemorative knives. And like various fried things that looked like they were covered in dust. And it was a nightmare place. And every time I read about it in the news, it saddens me that it's still around. And the fact that the tiger died and now this guy runs it has a camel is not surprising, but also very saddening. It's one of the few things I agree with on PETA is that they've tried to shut this place down for years. And I'm sorry that it's still around. It is, if you wanted to film like a really, really good like zombie movie, but the zombies are all like vengeful animals, like it's a really good place to set it up.
I just hear about this, like keeping a tiger and it's in a small cage for 20 years. And I'm thinking this is just like some making a grizzly bear wear roller skates level of bullshit animal cruelty right there. Just the worst. And again, I want to hear more about how this woman ended up with her face in the balls of a camel, because there's got to be more to this story if the woman is from Florida.
Yeah, I know they were trying to get their tiny little yappy dog. That, of course, they had a tiny little yappy dog. And the fact that she bit the camel on the testicles. But I do love that they gave the camel antibiotics, which I appreciated, which I felt was necessary. If Floridian saliva does contain the rage virus, as we've all found out. So
nobody likes an infected ball sack.
No.
Boy, you can go ahead and put that on my tombstone.
It's like we had like the colonoscopy thing last week, and I swear that like all of you have just got like my medical records, and you're just determined to list everything that's wrong with me on each and every show.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on from this and start talking about games. I'll go ahead and get us started out with Mario Kart Tour, which is the new mobile Mario Kart game from Nintendo. It had its little beta that they did, test drive, if you will, earlier this year, which I got to be a part of it, and I played it, and I didn't really care for it. There were some things I liked, but mostly I was just kind of down on the whole experience. Since then, they've made changes to the app, to the game that I detailed in my review that went up after playing it for 2 days. And now, while I'm sure some people might say that playing a mobile game for 2 days really isn't long enough to make a final judgment on it, I would counter that and say it absolutely is, especially with this game. Let me just tell you where I am right now with it. I have 5 grand stars in every single track except for one, and this one track you need to have either the musician Mario or the Pauline character, which are super rare poles in the gacha aspect of this game. In order to get a character who has 3 weapons per 3 weapon slots for the track, or item slots for the track, at which point you have the opportunity to get better combos. Because I'm sitting there with, like, I have just like Toad and Peach and Daisy and Koopa Troopa, and none of all of them on this track will only get me a single item. And so there's, like, I as good as I can do, I keep getting first place in it every fucking time, but I just haven't scored enough points in order to get the 5th grand star, because I have 4 of them. And it's just like, there is literally nothing I can do right now except spend money. And like that is the point that I'm at. I either have to buy some rubies in order to do some pulls, or I can pay. No, actually, that's pretty much the only thing that will give me the opportunity to maybe possibly get musician Mario and Pauline.
Could you grind? But we're talking about grinding like a 50-sided dice trying to get a 1 kind of thing, like. Or do you? Sorry, I basically mean, is it just the typical thing of you could do it by playing, but we're talking putting hours and hours and hours wishing on a star in order to just do it the free way.
So if I didn't want to pay right now, I have, like, there are kind of three ways for me to do it. One is to just keep at it and hope that, I don't know, I string together some amazing run that has just an endless combo, and I get an amazing item that is able to, take out a bunch of people, and I could just string that together with grabbing coins from the track and going into power slides, which is not going to happen, not on this track. Or I can start grinding for challenges, because there are challenges you can do, and some of them will get you rubies. But I mean, I think one of them is score 6,000 points with a mustache character. There's only one mustache character in the game right now, and it's 3 different versions of Mario, none of which I have. So that's one I'm not going to get. Or the other option is to wait, because right now, with the exception of this one track that I can't beat, I've beat every track that they have available to play right now, yet there are still more cups that are going to be unlocked as time goes by. So in, 12 hours, the next 2 cups will unlock. And if I can go do those ones well, I may be able to grab another rupee or 5 rupees to maybe do another pull. So I've really hit the point where you're going to be pushed into spending money. And I have options. I can just buy the rubies straight and do a pull. I can subscribe to the $4.99 subscription service and get a whole bunch of carts and rubies that I have earned but haven't been able to get because I'm not subscribing to the service. Or I can spend $20 and get like the starter pack, I guess, that has Mario, a cart, or Mario, some tickets, item tickets, and 45 rubies, which is enough to do a 10 pull.
The problem with everything you've just described is, like, and this is no great truth bomb I'm laying on anybody, it was crushingly boring to hear, like, the options. Like, this is not what playing video games is. Somebody weighing up the pros and cons of various options of time X money over currency divided by percentage of getting a character. That's not fucking playing video games. It's just boring.
Yes, if there is any game that has been designed as a monetization system first and a game second. Like, I can't think of a better example than this one, because it is all designed around pushing you to spend money, which I get. It's free to play. They've obviously spent a lot of time, taking those Nintendo 3DS graphics and tracks and putting them in this game. But it's not fun. It's just not fun to play. And I mean, with a regular Mario Kart game, Double Dash, 8 Deluxe, whatever, I can unlock every track, and then I will just keep going back and playing them and playing them and playing them, because there is skill that I can use there to improve my speed, improve my scores, and improve my finishes. And you just don't have that here. And you have the lack of definite control of your cart that kind of adds to that. It's like there is no perfect way to play this game. You have 3 different control options. You can just drag your thumb left or right to swerve left and right on the track. You can turn swerving off, in which you go directly into a drift. And then with that, you can also turn on gyroscopic steering, which sucks because it's so, I said in my review, it's like you're driving a boat, and that is the opposite of what Mario Kart is. Mario Kart is tight handling. And the only time that you really get tight handling in this game is when you go with the drift only option. But even then, you're susceptible to so much bullshit. And so racing in this game is not fun. And then you just add all of these systems on top of it, all of these different, the point system and the way that the tracks decide which characters are going to be good for that track and which ones are not going to be good for that track. It's just bullshit is what it is, and through and through. And then I know a lot of people this week have been saying, "Oh my God, the Nintendo Gold Pass is $4.99. That's the same price as Apple Arcade is." And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But I saw a better example online. Nintendo Switch Online is $20 a year. Mario Kart Gold Pass is $60 a year. That is fucked up, because at least with the Nintendo Switch Online, you get that amazing Tetris game. Like, that's way more fun than anything in fucking Mario Kart Tour. So it is just, I can't remember the last time I was as disappointed as I am with a mobile game as I am with this one, because it is just bad. And I know that there are people out there and be like, "Oh my God, it's actually fun. You just have to yada, yada, yada." I think I saw one person on Twitter who's like, "I don't know why everyone's having so much trouble. I'm doing great." And then he listed all the characters that he had. It's like, well, yeah, you either spent a ton of money or you are the luckiest person in the world to get, Pauline and Donkey Kong and Dry Bowser. Like, those are rare characters. So don't...
Those characters that they named, like Pauline and stuff. I think Chris Carter, he listed the
drop
probability rates. Yeah. And we're talking like single number percentages, aren't we? We're talking like 1-2% chances, right?
Well, I believe everything from there is a single poll, or is a single digit chance of getting, but they are like 1% versus more common things that are like 6%. And there's 20 different items that are 6%. So when you add all of those together, you get, it's a much more likely that you're going to get a common item versus one of the rare items. Now, I guess the one thing that is nice about the super rare items, or the featured items for the whatever season is going on or whatever event is going on. So right now it's the New York Tour, and they have Musician Mario, Pauline, and I think Peachette, I think that's her name, all together in it. You're guaranteed to get them before you empty the pipe, because the pipe will have 100 pulls before it resets. And so within 100 pulls, you're guaranteed to get them. Now, 100 pulls is an assload of money, and this game does not dispense rubies in any way that could be considered generous or even adequate. Like, you look at something like Dragalia Lost, which is the last big mobile game that Nintendo did, because let's just all ignore Dr. Mario World. That is like one of the most generous mobile games there is, and it's because Cygames made it, and Cygames is generally really generous with what they do on mobile because it apparently pays in dividends for them. Dragalia Lost has surpassed every other Nintendo mobile title except for Fire Emblem Heroes to become like the second highest grossing app that they have. And Nintendo just, I guess, either didn't learn anything from that or refused to go in that direction because like during the beta, I was getting rubies like there was no tomorrow. Like I got so many pulls. It was awesome. I unlocked so many different carts and characters and gliders. And this time it is the complete opposite. They have clamped their little coin purse shut, and they're just not being generous this time. And it's already not a fun game when it's a fun stingy, or when it's an unfun stingy game. It's just worse. It's just big top to bottom crap.
All I can see this being good for is if there happens to be a person who knows pretty much nothing about gaming except for mobile gaming and tries it out, might think, oh, I actually want to get a Switch and play Mario Kart. Like, that's the only good thing I can see.
Well, you sound pretty kind of like sometimes you're down on games. Do you know what I mean, CJ? We all are occasionally, but you do sound like pretty mad about this. And I think one of the things is, and a lot of people's anger is, I think it's also the brand that's being used to deliver this, isn't it? Because it's like Mario Kart was kind of one of like the few kind of shining. I'm pretty sure they've never done anything wrong with Mario Kart. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think it's almost like something's been taken from the Holy Trinity and been kind of turned into like one of these kind of modern monetization game experiences. And I think that definitely triples down on how disappointed or angry people feel towards it, because it is that franchise.
Yeah. Like if they had taken, I don't know, Stunt Racer FX or F-Zero even, I'm not, I like F-Zero, but I'm not the biggest of fans of it. I probably wouldn't be as angry as I am right now, because I guess I am angry about it. But because it's Mario Kart, this is a lot of people's first video game, whichever version is out at a time. When there's Mario Kart, you go and play it. Like I played Mario Kart with my parents when it was on the Wii. This is something that everyone can enjoy, and they're just exploiting that enjoyment. They're exploiting that history, the franchise's fan base for what? Quick money? Will it even be a lot of quick money? I've seen a lot of people doing the trial period of the Gold Pass, because you get a 2-week free trial period. And I'm wondering if they're just banking on people forgetting to cancel that, because I think on Android it automatically starts charging you.
It
after
does,
that 2
I think.
weeks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just gross, and it is. When Nintendo first got into doing mobile games, I was kind of excited about the possibility. I'm not anymore. I don't want them to make any more. I don't want them to try Zelda mobile or Metroid mobile or Kid Icarus mobile. I want them to stop.
I said this in the comments on Destructoid, but I still think Dry Bowser is an alternative universe name for Childish Gambino.
Oh, all right. On that note, let's go ahead and move on. Chris, what is this Keith Haring art that you have written down?
Oh, well, while you were playing mobile games, CJ, me, an intellectual, went to an art gallery. So I haven't played much this week. I've started Indivisible, which I can't talk about, but I've waited a long time for that game, and I've got it now, and a review for that should be coming up in a little over a week. But I went to Liverpool, home of the Beatles, and I went to the Tate Gallery there to see an exhibition, first time in this country, for Keith Haring. And Keith Haring was a new wave artist who blew up kind of the end of the 1970s, beginning of the 80s in New York. And he was a graffiti artist who was well known for kind of painting featureless characters, colourful featureless characters around the subways and on billboards that had been painted over. And his work was so recognisable as almost like modern hieroglyphics, because it was usually dogs, people, and just wavy lines and zigzags. And his work really got spotted around New York at this time, and he became quite a darling of the scene. And to the point that he'd be going around New York doing his paintings on these billboards, and then he'd go back to like where he'd been at the start of the day, and all of the paintings he'd done at the beginning of that day had been ripped down by people who were just keeping them for themselves. because he was starting to really become a name in the new wave scene. So he had this exhibition over at the gallery, and it was the first time any of his work's been brought over here, and it was just really stunning, really huge murals. He was an activist, and so much of his work is worryingly relevant today, as if we haven't pushed on at all since his heyday. But he did a lot of paintings about war profiteering and about apartheid. And some of these paintings are 8 foot tall, and they're kind of simplistic in design, but they're just really stunning. They kind of he painted on a lot of tarpaulin because it was cheaper than canvas. So a lot of the artists at the time would steal the kind of covers you'd put over your car when it was raining. They'd steal those and use those as giant canvases, pin them up onto walls. So it's oil on tarpaulin, which is gives a really interesting look. But he blew up in New York in the early 80s, and he was part of the big underground scene there. And then he made a name for himself because artists like Grace Jones and Madonna started touting his works, and it became kind of big in the hip hop scene. But sadly, as he was part of the LGBTQ community, and sadly, as it's New York in the 80s, when there was the advent of AIDS, Keith and many of his friends, unfortunately, contracted the illness, and his art kind of changes its style. It becomes a lot darker as he kind of tries to deal with the fear and the anger of what's happening to him and his friends, as well as his frustration at the state or the government for just being we don't know what this disease is and we can't do anything about it. Sorry. Do you know what I mean? So
that actually, I did not know that he did contract HIV/AIDS, but it does make sense now at this painting that I'm looking by him of a guy with a dick that has a hand that is choking him. Oh, yeah, you know what? That makes sense now.
There's a series of paintings he did of a sperm, but it's like a black sperm that's got devil horns, and it's kind of moves through these series of paintings, taking people out. And although his style remains, a lot of the color disappears, and it becomes a lot more sexually explicit and kind of grotesque, which is really sad to see that change in his style as his friends start dying around him, and he becomes aware that his own time is limited. But during the time he was alive, he did some great work. He did some fantastic murals. He painted on the Berlin Wall before that came down. Like I say, he did a lot of anti-apartheid stuff. He campaigned for safe sex, and even towards the end of his life, he did a lot of stuff children related. He did campaigns for book reading, and of all places, his style was kind of adopted by Sesame Street. And you know how Sesame Street has those little animated skits in between its scenes?
Yes.
You can sometimes see Keith Haring's work in those animated skits because it's very colourful and very kind of visually appealing. So I went to see this exhibition, and it was fascinating. He sadly died in 1990. And so it was just this 10-year window of New York between say 79 and 90. And just great work, simplistic but evocative, colourful, meaningful, and like I say, there's a little bit of sadness looking at it and seeing his work about war profiteering and racism, and looking at it and being a bit this was painted in 1980, and thinking that he painted on a wall at some point, that there was a wall that was built specifically to cause division, and it's at least we don't have to worry about that kind of stuff anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in some ways it was a little downbeat, but of course it's more just a celebration of a life and a talent, and in that sense it was absolutely fantastic. But if you're listening and you're in England and you wanted to go and see it, it's at the Tate in Liverpool, and I believe it's still open until the beginning of November. So you've still got a month to check it out, and maybe after that it'll travel back to America. So if you've been listening to me and you're I might check that out, then keep an eye out for it. It might come to your state.
Nice. That sounds like something I would like to go to if I didn't live 4 hours away from any major city.
Yeah, you got a car. it's very hard for me to sometimes to remember just how big America is. It's really easy to forget when you live in England that, like, I think it was Wes went somewhere the other day and he told me how long it took him to drive there. And it was basically the same amount of time it would take to drive from the south of England to the top of Scotland. But he was just going to like the next state or something like that. And I find that mind blowing sometimes.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to Charlotte. You've been playing some Final Fantasy 13, and I'm really interested to hear about this Ad Astra.
Yeah, Ad Astra is a movie that I went to see last night with Brad Pitt.
Oh, cool.
So I'll start with the movie because the reason I put this down is because I got the impression before I went to see it that it was being tipped for Oscars, particularly because of Brad Pitt's performance. And maybe Brad Pitt's performance was perhaps Oscar worthy, but the film is not as good as I think people are saying. There's nothing wrong with it, but it felt very much, to be honest, like it was a vehicle about Brad Pitt, like a film produced by Brad Pitt for Brad Pitt to get Brad Pitt Oscars. So the story was interesting enough, and funnily enough, the bits that people are criticizing, like some people are saying it's a bit sickly sweet. So to fill people in, it's a story about a astronaut who basically goes out to space to respond to signals that they believe is coming from his father, who was also an astronaut who went out on a mission to Neptune to contact life, try and see if there is life out there besides us. And basically there is like, what is it? Like signals are coming from space and they're trying to figure out what's going on and how the Brad Pitt's character's father's involved in all of it. And it becomes a lot about the relationship between father and son and how similar father and son are. And a lot of people have been saying it's very sweet and very, I don't feel like that's the message behind it. I felt like that part of the story was fairly well balanced. Mm-hmm. What got me was sudden space pirates and space monkeys. Out of nowhere.
That was not what I was expecting.
And that's in the review, so I don't think like I'm spoiling it to say there are space pirates and space monkeys, and neither of these are very well explored or very well telegraphed, and it just seems like the bits leading up to the actual core of the story that's very well balanced and very sort of, you feel like Brad Pitt's character really learns something through the story. Yeah. The bits leading up to it are just really, really lightweight and really tenuous and kind of ridiculous, and people were laughing in the cinema. So I'm truly like struggling to understand why there's been so many positive reviews. I can only think it's based on Brad Pitt's performance, which is very, very good, very emotive, very, very good at sort of displaying this conflicted nature of his character. But it's not enough to make the film a great film. I'm sorry. A lot of people have been saying it's Apocalypse Now crossed with 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's nowhere near that good. It's really not.
I think we all remember the Vietnam monkeys from Apocalypse Now, so it could be the same guy.
Like that's the weird thing. Like you would have to, that level of like a film would just be like, this is like a combination of the best oral sex you've ever received and your first bite of ice cream. I mean, it's just like it's just a weird. It's a hard bar to meet or jump over.
Exactly. Yeah, it was. I went in there expecting great things, and I came out kind of disappointed, even though it was a passable to quite good movie. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a friend who really likes deep space sci-fi. Really likes the whole go out into the great unknown and see what's out there. And he went to see it last night, and I was invited, but I couldn't make it. And he seemed to really enjoy it. And he's been looking for, his like 2001 buzz for a while, and he didn't quite get it from Interstellar. He did enjoy The Martian, and it seems like he enjoyed this. I haven't had a chance to talk to him at depth with it, but it is cool to see these kind of these epic, like kind of great unknown films, and Gravity as well, all these epic kind of great unknown space movies. I'm glad that we're going back into that. That trend has kind of restarted itself.
And so also you've been playing some Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah, I'm slowly making my way towards the end. So because I'm doing this for another podcast, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but one of the problems I've been having this weekend is that it's becoming clear that the bosses when I basically I got really far through Final Fantasy 13 to the point where I'd seen probably 2/3 of the game, and then I just stopped, and now I'm coming back to it. And so towards the end, I'm feeling like the bosses are put there for a reason. Like there's one boss that you have to stagger him, and if you don't stagger him, you can't do anything because he blocks all of your moves until you stagger him. And then there's another boss where it's the complete opposite. If you stagger him, it sets him off into a second cycle, which is so hard to beat because he's just pummeling you and you can't heal fast enough. So the point is not to stagger him. And it's like, in a way, I respect that. In a way, I think that's really clever. And it's obviously testing everything you've learned throughout the game. But on the other hand, like the stagger bosses where you have to stagger them or nothing works, really well executed as a boss battle. But the one where the easiest way to defeat him was not to stagger him was really boring because you just had to like set your team to have a couple of commanders, and then somebody doing the healing or the sentinel, and just sit there and wait for like 20-15 minutes. There are faster ways of doing it, but it's dangerous. So like obviously the easier way of doing it is just to have one healer and have everybody just bashing away at him gradually until his health disappears. And if you go on message boards, because the reason I found out about this is because I got stuck and I looked up how other people were doing it. There are people telling you how to defeat it the harder way, but a lot of people are just like, oh, don't bother, just wait for his health to go down. Why would you risk dying? Just wait, So it's like I feel like they are testing you out, but there's just like some shape of boss battles that's just not enjoyable to fight. And I'm never a fan of any boss battle where he's just pummeling you so hard that the trick is, can you heal yourself fast enough? So I'm having a fun time towards the end. I'm definitely going to jump straight into 13.2 when I'm done. But there are definite holes in the execution of 13 that I can't remember seeing that extent of holes when I played 15.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's, and the linearness didn't bother me until right at the end. And now I'm like, I've done barely any side quests and I didn't really have any side quests to do. There was like one set of side quests with the Seath who like say, please defeat this enemy for me and you'll get a reward. And that's about it. I think you get to build a robot for Neil at some point. Like she finds her old friend who's a robot and you have to rebuild him and you get a load of loot for that. But it's like, it's very, very linear compared to, I think I prefer Final Fantasy 15 to be honest, but it's still really enjoyable. And despite all of its absolute bullshit with the story, I still have a very, a fondness for Final Fantasy 13 that I had after playing it for about 20 hours.
Yeah.
So
I have heard that the sequel and especially Lightning Returns are probably are better than the first one.
Yeah, I've heard very good things about 13.2, which is why I'm really excited to jump in. Also because I haven't got a chocobo, because I think to get a chocobo, you have to do like this one chain of side quests. You have to do practically all of it to get a chocobo that you can ride about on. So what's with that? Why have I not got a chocobo?
Yeah, that seems like it should be part of the main quest. Gosh, Final Fantasy, jeez.
I've played the 2 and Lightning Returns and all that. They are much better games. They're tighter. They're more concise. They kind of get to the essence of what you want the game to be. You'll have fun for sure.
Great, glad to hear.
All right, we're going to wrap this up with Occam's. And Occam's, before I let you get into it, I would just like to point out, in your description of the tiger truck stop, you said that the tiger would be on the plains of Africa. Just a reminder to everyone, tigers do not live in Africa. So, Occam's.
I don't know where the fuck ever they live. I don't know. All those, like, is it from a zoo? Then it probably lived in Africa at one point. I don't know. Where are they then? We're in India, maybe? Where
that's exactly where.
Sure, whatever. Tiger, burning bright. Kiss my ass. All right. I've been playing Borderlands 3 still, and it's fine. I'm playing as Flack, the Beastmaster, which is fine. I mostly mute the game because I don't care about the story. They kind of peaked with Handsome Jack. So yeah, it's fun. Shooting stuff, the weapons and all. It's a good time. If you like Borderlands, it is more Borderlands, and that is perfectly fine. So yeah, nothing really new to talk about there. But I do have a recommendation for people.
Okay.
Look up something. It's from the Nicholas brothers. This is from 1943 called Stormy Weather. You're going to watch two guys dance in a way that doesn't seem humanly possible today. It's these two brothers who were sort of virtuoso dancers. And there's a bit. It's made the rounds online, but it's you know what I'm talking about. Good.
Oh yeah.
Where they are leaping over each other onto these steps, and they kind of land in splits. And CJ, I would conservatively say they're getting 6 or 7 feet of air each for each jump, and landing right on their crotches, and just. They make it look effortless. And apparently, according to what I've read online, take that as you will, they didn't rehearse that part, which would kind of speak to their virtuosity and maybe being insane. But Nicholas Brothers, Stormy Weather. I actually was looking them up last night, and there are some there's some documentaries that people had made about them years ago that were uploaded to YouTube. If you just want to see some amazing dancing, kind of in the vein of Fred Astaire, and that early black and white stuff. Check them out. They are fucking incredible.
I'm going to assume that they're probably doing this shit in like tuxedos or something as well.
Oh,
right?
Of course.
100% tuxedos. 100% in tuxedos. And it's that thing where it looks so effortless that you realize, oh no, these guys are masters of this craft. So it's a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah, after I saw that, I was reading some other little factoids about it, and apparently, the production, the studio that was making the movie wanted to give everyone a chance to see them do this, so they built bleachers on the other side, on the backside of the camera, so the entire cast and crew could come watch them do this dance routine. And it is fucking amazing. It's maybe 3 minutes of your day, but it will make your day.
You are listening to Podtoid.
That is it for games, but we still have some headlines to cover. It is time for the news. And as opposed to last week, there wasn't really a lot going on in the past 7 days to talk about, but we're going to try to do it anyways. Arguably the biggest story of the week, unless you're really into VR, was the Sony Nintendo Direct. I'm sorry, that is the Sony State of Play presentation, the new and more streamlined version of Sony State of Play that basically just mimicked exactly what Nintendo does with its Directs, but without all the color in its graphics. It was a really neat show. I like that it's streamlined like this, even if it does really look like a Nintendo Direct. And they had some interesting games. Humanity looks fun. Wadham is something I've been looking forward to for a while. Civ 6 is coming to PS4 and, as we learned, Xbox One, as well as the expansions that is coming to all 3 consoles. And then finally, the show ended on The Last of Us 2. And we got a lot of details this week about the game. We got a release date. It's going to be February 1st or February 21st of next year. Looking at the story, it looks like it is Ellie out for revenge after her girlfriend possibly, maybe, most definitely gets murdered by
context, CJ.
Yeah,
context.
By an
context isn't dead. I know everyone thinks context is dead now, but it's not.
It's about as dead as Ellie's girlfriend. Maybe gets murdered by an organization of non-infected people. Ellie, I don't know how, she somehow survives and decides, like a rebooted Lara Croft, to take the fight to them. And of course, along for the ride is Joel. We learned this week also that there will be no online multiplayer component of the game, which I never played the online version of Last of Us, of the first one, so I'm not really sure if I'm missing anything. But if it is part of the PS4 edition that is going to be free on PlayStation Plus next month, then I may give it a shot. But they've also come out and said that this is the biggest single player adventure that they have ever created, and I was blown away by the look of this trailer. The graphics in this are redonkulous. Charlotte, you're a resident big fan of Last of Us. What did you think of the trailer?
I almost cried at work watching it. The appearance of Joel made me tear up.
Yeah.
So.
It's really good. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, I didn't have the same, like, I understand, and obviously, because people were saying that the use of Ellie's girlfriend, presumably girlfriend, presumably dying, that it was a cheap shot, and I think I get what they're saying, but also I feel like there's more to it than that. I think it was all off camera. Like, I don't think even if that's what happened, it would be on camera in the game. But I think it was off camera in the trailer for a reason. I think there is more to it than that, whether she was infected and got shot, or whether there's some story behind that. I think she probably did get shot, but I think it might not just be that she was kidnapped and then shot. There's
Right.
more going on there.
Right.
And I say presumably girlfriend because it's not being confirmed that they were in a relationship. I think it could be more like a story like with Riley, where it was like it was sort of her second relationship like that after Riley, and like Riley was her friend in the DLC, right? Her first love in the DLC. Like, probably that they were friends, and like Ellie was working out how to get with her, and then she got murdered, which is actually even more heartbreaking from my point of view. That she was trying to, in my head, it's like she was trying to work out how to get with this girl and work out what was going on with her because she has this ex, and then suddenly she's dead, and she's like, ah.
I will say from the gay point of view, it is annoying how often media uses or doesn't allow there to be happy gay couples. Nintendo is a bad example of it with the Fire Emblem, like a really, really bad example. But you kind of hope for more when you get to Western developers who are not afraid to use LGBTQ characters in their games, to maybe let one of them have a happy story that's and a happy relationship that is not just coming from some indie game. Because didn't what's his fucking name in Uncharted?
Nathan Drake.
Thank you. Didn't he have like 3 love interests in that game? Like, he gets all the women coming after him, and Ellie can only get one girl at a time who dies. Like, it's kind of annoying.
That's true, actually. Yeah, I never saw it from that perspective. Yeah, that's really like
that's
Nathan Drake
you went
is
gay.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Nathan Drake's not much of a catch. No. So I don't know why all these girls are interested in him. Also, not a steady prospect if he's hopping around the world.
Does all that mass shooting of hundreds of men on a daily basis not do anything for you?
Can't say it does. I mean, is he going to put a down payment on a house for me? Probably not.
He's gonna discover a house. He's gonna go to like Egypt or something, and he's gonna bring you back a solid gold house. I don't know.
He would put a down payment on a house, but he just spends all of his money on bullets. So I mean, where's that money gonna come from?
But he's such a lovable rogue.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was a kind of an interesting trailer. I can't even go down any line of. I've seen people like putting out almost semi-op-eds on like what the ending is going to be, and it's like, I'm not sure why you'd do that to yourself. I know it's hard not to read into things and automatically write an entire plot line out of context and write an ending out of context. I know that's really difficult. I'll tell you what I did find surprising. I know that they want to pull people in, but Last of Us has an audience. It's considered by many to be one of the best games of all time. Not by me, but by many, and I respect that. But you know they're going to buy it anyway. I'm pretty sure you cannot tell them Joel's in it and then just have them find it out in the game. Like, that fucking moment happening live in the game while you're playing it, holy shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying it didn't work in the trailer, because obviously it made you emotional, Charlotte, and I really like hearing that. I'm glad that video game trailers can bring these emotions out of people. But there was a little part of me that was just like, I wish you had it. I wish, like, Naughty Dog could have just kept that card to their chest until the game came out.
On the other hand, I think it was kind of clever in a way, because I wonder how many people would have been expecting Joel to be some sort of really solid support character. And sort of like people are still thinking, oh, it's partially Joel's game, when they very clearly want to send the message, no, this is Ellie's game.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was clear from the trailer that he is really frail. And it's the question is, he's going to be there helping you, but like, he's not going to be, this is definitely going to be Ellie packing most of the firepower, if you know what I mean. So I feel like in a way it was clever, because it sets out expectations that this is like saying to people, this is Ellie's game. Ellie deserves to have her own game, and we deserve to see more of her story. And Joel's story is sort of, in a way, has been told with him as the central focus, and now it's Ellie's turn.
Oh yeah, and I'm completely in agreement with that. Absolutely. I just meant that kind of surprise would have been really cool to just kind of to pop up while you were playing. But now, kind of, I think people will kind of be playing the game and have that expectation in the back of their mind because they know it's coming. You know what I mean? But I'm totally with you on what you're saying about this being Ellie's story. Like, I would have been completely happy with Joel not being in it at all. But I guess some people are going to want that. They like that. They like that back connection, don't they? But
I did see, like, I feel like that the problem is you can't really tell Ellie's story without talking about what's gone on post the first game, because like, I saw this really interesting theory that basically Joel, what the Joel we see in the trailer is instead like a ghost that is haunting Ellie, and that they had a falling out, and either Joel died or Ellie killed him or something. And if that was true, that would be amazing. Like, I half hope that, even though that's probably not going to happen, that would be pretty amazing if that's the case. But it's kind of the reason why I think that would be amazing is because there is I can imagine a lot of shit went down between Ellie and Joel between the first game and the second game. There was a lot of the decisions that Joel made in the first game are decisions that went against Ellie's wishes. So, yeah.
Our second story of the week has to do with a game that actually wasn't part of the state of play, but a lot of people thought it would be. It is rumored right now that the team behind Batman Arkham Origins, the game that Warner Brothers publicly announced it wouldn't be fixing, just like Batman Arkham Knight on PC. Anyways, they are supposed to be developing a Batman Court of Owls video game. The Court of Owls storyline was from a few years ago in the comics. Chris, are you familiar at all with this storyline, with this arc?
I didn't read the whole thing, but I'm familiar with the basics of it. It's essentially the idea that in the founding days of Gotham City, like way before even like Thomas Wayne or anyone like that, the city was built upon this criminal underbelly that were known as like the Court of Owls, and for a long time they were basically the blood veins of Gotham, and they kind of put the money into Gotham and like kind of ran it as an organized with this huge clandestine organized crime syndicate bubbling away underneath, and then they've kind of fallen out of favor, or they've kind of quietened down as all these wacky supervillains like the Riddler and the Joker have all come along. And then in the Court of Owls storyline, they basically decide that they're pissed off with the fact that Batman is what Gotham City is known for, when it's like, we built this fucking city. So they basically reinstigate themselves in this all-out attack to basically kill Batman, destroy the Wayne family name, and make it so the prevailing legend of Gotham City is their legend, essentially.
And what are the Talons?
The Talons are basically the names of their agents. So they're like highly trained assassins, kind of like ninja dudes, as far as I'm aware. Isn't it convenient that Batman picked an animal that an owl would attack? That was really, because they were started hundreds of years ago. It's just super convenient that their arch nemesis picked a rodent as his icon.
That was some good foresight from the creators of Batman 80 years ago to go with bats, because one day those owls would come and get them.
So they're apparently making this game. Warner Brothers Montreal are making this new Batman game, and that's apparently an element of it. But the teaser they showed had other symbols that could have represented like other organizations, like maybe the League of Shadows or the League of Assassins. I can't remember what they currently are called at the moment, which is Ra's al Ghul's faction. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to it because I love all those Arkham games, and it is Warner Brothers Montreal, and Arkham Origins is kind of, it's treated by Rocksteady as the one we don't talk about. Do you know what I mean? And as you said, it has its fair share of problems. It has technical problems. It has some terrible map problems. It has like an awful map that doesn't make for friendly flying when you're gliding around Gotham. But it did have a really good story. It had some really good character design, and it had the best boss fights in all of the Arkham games, like better boss fights than Asylum or City. So if WB Montreal can learn from kind of their mistakes with Origins, maybe take some of the positives out of Arkham Knight. And Arkham Knight today, you boot that fucking game up. I don't give a shit what you think. You boot that game up. That's one of the best looking games ever made. And it still is today. Yeah. If they can borrow some of that look, some of that lighting engine, some of that art style or whatever, I genuinely think they could make a really good new Batman game. Of course, the other thing they could do is abandon the Arkham style of gameplay entirely and do something totally different. But knowing that Warner Brothers as a game publisher are totally set in what works, stick with that. I have a feeling it's just going to be another kind of sub Arkham City style adventure.
Yes, if it works, stick with it. And if it doesn't work, let's not bother fixing it. That's the Warner Brothers way.
Right. Yeah. I did an article a couple of months ago about that cancelled Warner Brothers Montreal Batman game. Do you remember that?
Yes.
It had that lady. It had like a really classy Lady Black Mask. Mm-hmm. And if I could be anybody else in the whole world, I would be that Lady Black Mask. She looked absolutely fucking amazing. But just based on just those character designs for that cancelled game, and they were going to put the Bat bike in it, so you were going to blitz around on the motorbike and stuff like that. If they're still holding on to some of those ideas and they put that into this, I genuinely think they could come up with something really special. The only thing they could do that I'd prefer is if they did like a Batman 66 open world game. I'd lose my fucking mind. If they did, I know that they'd have so much trouble because they'd have to get the licenses for all those actors. And like they couldn't really do the voices because so many of them have sadly passed on now. But if they could do like an Arkham game that looked like the old TV show, that'd be. If I win the lottery, that's the game I'm funding. Do you know what I mean?
Oh man, that makes me want to go pick up whatever Lego Batman had Adam West as the narrator. Because
of course, yeah. You and he was like the hidden character on each stage, I think, as well. That you had to track him down. Yeah. Did you play any of the Arkham games, Charlotte?
No, I have 2 of them in my sort of buying all the PS3 games for like barely any money and then just putting them on my shelf and not playing them. But wasn't one of them on PS Plus this month?
Yes, it's still on until I think either tomorrow, either Tuesday or Wednesday. Batman, Arkham's, which one is it? Arkham Knight is currently free on Plus.
And I think Epic Games Store just gave away like every Batman game, didn't they? Like
yes,
last week.
With all the DLC.
I think
I've got no excuse.
I think like when the bomb drops and it's like the post-apocalypse, all that's going to be left is like hard drives with all the Arkham games on, because it seems like even if people don't like those games, somehow it just seems that everybody owns all of them. Even if they're like, I don't remember how I got Arkham Asylum and City and Night, but there they are on my Steam account and my PlayStation account and my Epic Games account, even though I don't remember getting any of them. They have to be like the most owned games in the world.
That and Assassin's Creed, because some of the newer games got bundled with the first Assassin's Creed, so I own it like at least twice, maybe three times.
And like a whole bunch of Telltale adventures as well. It's like, when the fuck did I buy Back to the Future, the Telltale game? But everyone's got it, you know what I mean?
I remember getting that as part of an end of the year game awards thing. Telltale sent us codes for Tales from the Borderlands, and the codes unlocked every other Telltale game that they had made up to that point.
Wow. So Sam and Max and all of those games, yeah.
Yep, every single one. Didn't play goddamn one of them. I'm
just saving all that stuff for that day where Steam finally lose and they're told that people are allowed to trade in like their games, and then it's like all those free games that came with all those bundles. I'm like, ching ching, I'm going to cash in on all of that stuff.
Yeah. All right, so real quick, our final story of the week has to do with a little bit of movie news. The probably never going to get made Uncharted film has a new director. It has seen its fair share of screenwriters over the years. David O. Russell, who you might know is just a dream to work on set with. He was the first person announced to be the writer and director of the film, but he stepped away. And other writers that have stepped in have included the writers who wrote that awful Jason Momoa Conan film, the writers of the National Treasure franchise, David Guggenheim, Seth Rogen and his writing partner have actually turned down the opportunity to write this film. And then as for directors, like I said, it has gone through David O. Russell, Neil Berger, who did The Illusionist and Divergent, Seth Bowl, who made the Baywatch movie, so thank God they avoided that one, Sean Levy, who did all the Night at the Museum movies, and most recently Dan Trachtenberg, who you probably only know from his work on 10 Cloverfield Lane. I don't know why they're still trying to make this film, but they are. And the latest person to attach their name as director is Travis Knight, who directed Kubo and the Two Strings, which is a movie I absolutely love, and then Bumblebee, which is a movie I absolutely have no intention of ever seeing. This movie has been in the works since 2008. And the question is that right now it is a prequel to the video game series. But by the time this movie gets made, will Tom Holland be so old it can just be an Uncharted movie?
I don't know. I'm really surprised that of the franchises like Sony and Uncharted are kind of struggling to get this off the ground.
Yeah.
Whereas like that Mortal Kombat film's just like full steam ahead. And you would have thought, given what the franchises are, and also given Mortal Kombat's like kind of shaky history on television and in cartoons and films, you would have thought that was the film that would be struggling, that was the film that was trying to find its footing and find a director. But that film's like started shooting already.
Yeah.
But Uncharted, which is obviously the bigger budget and has got like a fucking Avenger in it, that's the one they can't get off the ground. And I find that really just surprising.
This has the opportunity to be the next Indiana Jones, and it just is like they just keep stumbling over themselves with it. I don't know what is going on. And more important, like if they can't find a screenwriter, have they asked Amy Hennig if she would do it?
Right.
Because like she wrote the first 3 fucking games. She won awards for doing that.
Yeah, because they're pretty fucking good. Like, but I don't know. But like I said, because so we talked about Nathan Drake earlier and his habit of like machine gunning people at whim, and it's like you can't have Tom Holland doing that. It just doesn't work. So
No.
I'm assuming that this would be a little more like swinging through trees and rolling under boulders than it will be like taking on like groups of pirates and megalomaniacs who want to get some old ancient Aztecian power that they can use to hypnotize the planet, that kind of stuff. Then it's going to be like just this gun fest.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of Tom Holland fist fights in this movie. Like that's how they're going to replace it. Just him bare knuckle brawling with a bunch of ethnically diverse pirates that he's taking down.
I'm sure it's going to. I'm not sure. I was going to say I'm sure it's going to come out, but I'm not. I'm going back to my original point. I'm still just kind of flabbergasted that it's not already on the road, and it's got a release date. Like it's like I don't remember the exact date, but it's like December 12th, 2020 is its release date
next year,
and they've not started shooting yet. Like for a big budget adventure movie, unless it's all going to be CGI, that's a squeeze. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, even if it's all CGI, so that stuff still takes time to put together. And who even knows if they have a working version of the script that they want yet, given that they've gone through half a dozen people already. Who
would you guys cast as an adult Nathan Drake?
See, Nathan Fillion's the dumb, obvious choice, so I don't want to go with him. I'm going to go completely opposite direction and say Idris Elba, just because I can watch him in anything.
John Cena, I don't know.
Okay, so you really want that? Okay, John Cena, come on.
But he's pretty charismatic. Can you imagine him like climbing vines and stuff like that? He's like a tank spidering up a wall.
He would pull the tree down. That is how big he is.
Going in the opposite direction, what about like somebody like Jesse Eisenberg or Michael Cera as Nathan Drake? Just like really nerdy, awkward Nathan Drake.
Aye. That's the next. So the next article I'm writing is Sony announced Charlotte Cutts to direct Uncharted movie starring Michael Cera, and that sounds fine to me. Written by CJ, I don't know, and John Cena to produce.
You are listening to Podtoid.
That is it for the news, which means it is time for the Podtoid question of the week.
I'm sorry. Is that not good enough for your anus?
Sorry, that is not the Podtoid question of the week. This week's question has to do with video game music. Last week, I talked about Sayonara Wild Hearts, and I found it to be a very, very enjoyable and playable piece of music. It is a pop album video game, and it is exactly what that entails. So my question to you is, what is one album that you would like to be able to play as a video game? And unfortunately, we lost Occam's. He was having some trouble with his microphone. But his choice for this was Deltron 3030. Has anyone here heard of Deltron 3030?
No. Yes. I mean, no.
So no, none of us.
No, the only, like, when I have some sort of apathy towards the question and I don't really like music-based games is not really my jam at the minute, to be honest. I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't really speak to me. Mm-hmm. So my temptation is to go for something that would be funny. I'm thinking one of Henry Rollins' spoken word albums turned to some sort of game would be funny.
It'd just be super intense and there'd just be spit flying everywhere all the way through it.
I don't know what kind of game, just sort of like the feeling of anger on the screen. Just, I don't know.
Well, that's a much better answer than mine. The one I came up with was Moving Pictures by Rush. You play as Tom Sawyer and you're driving your illegal red Barchetta as the gleaming ally air cars give you chase. It would basically play like the Horizon Chase Turbo game. That's what I'm imagining here, but it's through the Rush album.
And all the stages would have to be like 8 minutes long.
Yes.
It's like a prog rock video game.
I know what my game would actually be, though.
Okay.
Like Henry Rollins, before he went off and did all his Black Flag stuff actually worked at Haagen-Dazs. So it would be just Henry Rollins serving people at Haagen-Dazs like one of these like Diner Dash type games, and just this angry monologue in the background of I hate everything.
Oh, that's fucking good.
That's good stuff. Yeah. I think you could make a good Devo platform game.
Yeah.
You could walk on those little helmets they wear, because they're kind of blocky anyway, aren't they? So there you go. That's a terrible answer, isn't it?
Well, I only did come up with the question like an hour and a half ago, so I'm not gonna hold it against you. It's a weird one. It's out there.
Do you know that Frankie Goes to Hollywood had a video game in the 80s?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Like it was on home computers like the Spectrum and Commodore and stuff. I think it's literally just called Frankie Goes to Hollywood. And it's just like a really odd. Oh, no, I think it's just called Frankie. And I think it's just kind of an odd. And if I remember right, the other side of the tape had like 60 minutes of music on. So when you loaded the game, you were supposed to turn the tape over and play the music while you were playing the game.
Oh, the things we did to play games in the 80s.
It was experimentation. It's what we did. Before everything was fucking Mario Kart Tour.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, that game wasn't just good. It was crucial.
Oh, no.
All right, that is it. We are just about out of time for the show. We do have a community shout out again. We lost Occam's, so I'm just going to go ahead and read this real quick. He wanted to give a shout out to Gamer Maniac for their birthday. So happy birthday to Gamer Maniac. And
Happy birthday, buddy.
Happy birthday.
all right, and that is it, folks. On behalf of Chris, Charlotte, and myself, and Occam's and Dan, hopefully you guys will be back with us next week for the full show. Thank you for listening to Podtoid, and don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, and the Destructoid YouTube channel.